The dry season had painted the village amber. Everything looked like it was already burning. The red earth, the mud walls, the sky bleached white with heat. Nothing moved. Even the goats stood still in the shade, too tired to wander. It was in this stillness that Mama Adana received the news. Not from her CHIKA's own lips. No, the girl had forgotten her entirely. The news came instead from Gozi, the village gossip, who had heard it from a trader who came from the city with yams and fabric and other people's secrets. Gozi stood at Mama Adana's gate with her eyes bright and her mouth full of sweet poison. "Your CHIKA," she said, pausing to let the words settle like dust. "She has become the wife of Chief Obi, the great Chief Obi, with 3 compounds and a house in the city where the roads are paved with stones." Mama Adana smiled. It was a tight, terrible smile, the kind that never reaches the eyes. "Is that so?" she said. Not a question, never a question, just 2 words, flat and still as a stone dropped into deep water. She sent Ngozi away, and then she sat down, and the fire died, and the goats wandered unfed, and she did not move. For 3 days she sat in her darkened hut, staring at the mortar and pestle in the center of the room. That same mortar where CHIKA had once knelt, that useless girl, that deaf and clumsy thing who could never pound yam without spilling. That same girl now sat on silk cushions in a chief's compound, addressed as Lolo, called Queen, wearing gold. On the 4th day, Mama Adana rose. She went to the back of the hut, where the old medicines slept in dried gourds on a wooden shelf. Her fingers moved along the row slowly, carefully. They stopped at a small clay pot, not bigger than her thumb, sealed with dark red wax. Inside was a powder, fine and grey, ground from the seeds of the Ose Oji tree that grew only in the forbidden forest at the edge of the village. 1 pinch in palm wine, 2 heartbeats of silence, then a sleep that never ends. She had kept this pot for 20 years. That night, by the light of an oil lamp, she wrote a letter. Her hand shook, not with age, but with something hotter. She wrote of sorrow. She wrote of regret. She wrote of a mother's heart broken by her own harsh tongue and foolish pride. She wrote that she wished only to embrace her daughter one final time, to ask forgiveness before the ancestors called her home. She wrote beautifully. She had always been very good with words. The bus ride to the city took 6 hours. The road started as red dust and laterite. Then somewhere in the middle of the journey it changed, becoming smooth and dark, black as charred yam. Mama Adana sat with her parcel on her lap the entire way. Fine cloth on top, a calabash of palm wine in the middle, and at the bottom, hidden deep in the folds of fabric, the small clay pot. She rehearsed her face in the scratched bus window, the sorrowful eyes, the trembling lip, the mother who had suffered so much, who had been too proud, who now saw the error of her ways. She practiced saying the words slowly, testing their weight. "I am an old woman. Forgive me. Drink with me. Let us make peace before I die." She said them again and again until they sounded like the truth. She was very good at this. The city assaulted her the moment she stepped off the bus. Noise like 1,000 drums beating at once. Buildings that seemed to touch the clouds. She found Chief Obi's compound by asking. One stranger after another. Her pride swallowed one direction at a time. The gates were tall and black with gold at the edges. A young gateman with a scar across his cheek looked at her letter, looked at her face, looked at her parcel. He said nothing, just "Wait here." Then he turned and walked away, and the gate stayed closed. She waited 2 hours in the afternoon sun. When the gate finally opened again, it was not the young man who appeared. It was CHIKA. Mama Adana almost did not recognize her. The girl, no, the woman who stood in the gateway wore a wrapper of deep indigo and gold, heavy and rich, moving like water when the wind touched it. Her hair was arranged in intricate braids, each end sealed with gold thread. But it was the face that stopped Mama Dana's breath. They sat in the reception hut, Chika on a low-carved stool, Mama Dana on the visitor's mat on the floor. Between them, on a low table, sat two identical calabash cups. Mama Dana opened her parcel. The fine cloth was admired, the palm wine was poured into both cups, and in one of those cups, with steady, practiced hands, Mama Dana added a single pinch of grey powder from the clay pot hidden beneath her wrapper. She spoke with warmth, with sorrow, with the performance of a woman who had come a long way to make peace.
My daughter, my heart has been heavy as iron. I came to ask your forgiveness, to die with a clean soul.
Then Chika looked down at the table. Your cup, she said quietly. You have not drunk from it. The smile on Mama Dana's face stiffened. She laughed a small, dry laugh. An old woman's caution, she said. The journey had tired her stomach. Or perhaps, Chika said, and her voice was different now, layered, still, settled deep in her bones like sediment in a river. You knew what was in the wine. Mama Dana's hand moved toward her cup, and in that moment, something terrible happened inside her mind. She looked at the two cups on the table, identical, dark, waiting, and she could not remember which one she had poisoned. The bus ride was long. The heat was heavy. The shock of seeing Chika transformed had rattled something loose in her certainty. She searched her memory. The right hand, she told herself. I held the powder in my right hand. I poured with my right hand. This cup, my cup, is safe. I am certain. She drank. The warmth began immediately. This warmth bloomed from her chest outward, heavy as honey, pooling in her stomach, beginning to beat in time with her heart. Thrum, thrum, thrum. She tried to tell herself it was only fear playing tricks on an tired old woman. The poison was in the other cup. She was certain. But the warmth did not stop. You switched them, she whispered. No, Chika said. Her voice was perfectly calm. You switched them yourself, in your mind. You are always so clever of your own cleverness, Adana. But poison does not care about cleverness. Poison only asks one question. Which cup? Mama Adana tried to stand. Her legs would not obey. The paralysis was rising through her body like a slow tide, turning her limbs to water, and Chika leaned forward closer than she had ever voluntarily been, and in her face was an expression Mama Adana had never expected to find there. Not triumph, not hatred, pity. The Ose Oji powder is well known in our village, Adana. My mother died of it. The neighbors said it was fever, but I found the clay pot in your hut years later when you sent me to fetch your medicine. I was 12 years old. I kept that secret. This way is cleaner. This way you die by your own hand attempting to kill a daughter who only ever wanted your love. The room was very quiet after she left. Mama Adana lay on the mat, feeling her heart slow its rhythm, feeling the city outside the window continue its noise without her. Somewhere a radio played music, a car horn called out in the distance. Life went on indifferent and vast as it always does.